Hello, I'm Clive Davis. Congratulations to the Banshees of Inisherin, which was nominated for an Oscar. I saw it in the cinema a couple of weeks ago and thought it was a great film. In it, Brendan Gleeson's character suddenly announces to Colin Farrell's, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore." Why? How come? Until yesterday they were best friends. He also says, "From now on, every time you bother me, every time you talk to me, I will cut off the finger of my left hand, one by one, and give it to you." And he does. This is reasonably strong and strange fare for a modern mainstream audience, perhaps. But to cut off a finger and give it to another person was actually a common practice in the Yakuza world until recent years. This is called enko-zume, or yubi-zume. On this episode, I would like to explain this unique practice of the Yakuza. Cutting off your finger and giving it to another person. Reasons for cutting off a finger are varied, but basically it's when you make a mistake and have to take responsibility for it. When you have offended someone by your actions and want to ask for forgiveness. Also when you want to leave the clan, money trouble, women trouble, drug problems, etc. You might also cut off a finger as a sign of good faith.
杯の前にやな、お前が今までしてきたことのけじめをつけんかい。己も極度やったら落とし前のつけはよう分かっとるやろ。それができん言うんだったら今日の杯はねえぞ。はい。終わった。
There is a theory that the custom of cutting off a finger began with prostitutes in the Edo period. A prostitute would cut off her finger and write an oath in the blood to prove to her customer that "I truly love you and only you." They would also give the cut finger or the removed fingernail to the man. There are also stories of prostitutes who send 10 fingers to 10 men in order to hold their hearts, but only one of these fingers was real, and the other 9 were fake fingers made from rice flour. Dosu, or a broad-bladed kitchen knife, or a knife and a hammer, a chisel and a hammer. Some people even bite off their fingers with their teeth. A dosu is a dagger that can be easily hidden inside one's clothing. How did the Yakuza come to start using the dos? Well, in the mid-19th century, gambling halls attracted all kinds of people. Physical labourers, transporters, merchants, etc. Maybe even a blind masseur or two. And ronin, wandering samurai without a master to serve. Conflicts often broke out in the gambling halls. At such times, a ronin would use his sword. Samurai swords are very long, about 95 centimeters long, and weigh about 1 kilogram. It is most powerful when swung down from above. However, in Japanese houses with low ceilings, if you attempt to swing a sword, it could get caught in the ceiling beams and get stuck. Long, heavy swords are not suited for use in small rooms. To fight against such a ronin, a dagger like a dosu was more advantageous. There are some variations depending on time period and region. In the older days, you would cut off the little finger of your dominant hand to atone for your actions. For example, stealing money, cheating, messing around with someone else's woman. If it was for your clan or clan leader, or to swear an oath of allegiance, you could cut the little finger off of the non-dominant hand. The losing of a little finger of the dominant hand can be problematic. For example, when you grip a dosu, it can slip easily without your little finger. As you can all see, if you try it out at home, try and grip your dosu, your dagger. It's quite difficult to grip it strongly without this little finger, surprisingly. To use your dosu effectively, you must grip it with all of your force, including the little finger, striking the opponent with your body and thrust the blade through. Even if you just stick it in and pull it out, they might survive. So, after sticking the blade in, turn it 90 degrees. This will damage internal organs. It can deliver a fatal wound to your opponent. Turning it 90 degrees is quite difficult though without the little finger. So, as you can see, cutting the little finger off the dominant hand means that the cutter's fighting ability is reduced. In more recent years, people are not killing each other with dosu as often as they used to. So, the preference for a first offence has become to cut the little finger of the non-dominant hand. Cut at the first joint. So, if you're right-handed, your right hand is your dominant hand, left is your non-dominant hand. If the finger is to be given to a rival clan, it must retain the fingernail. If you're giving it to a person of the same clan, it is permissible to be presented without a fingernail. Therefore, you can cut the same finger at the second joint should you be required to make an offering again. So you use the same finger twice, one joint, two joints, rather than getting rid of two fingers. However, that would actually be your third offence, because for a second offence it's necessary to cut the little finger of your dominant hand. So the order of preference for cutting is non-dominant little finger, dominant little finger, non-dominant ring finger, dominant ring finger. Then the thumb, the index and the middle finger of the dominant hand are necessary for holding chopsticks. So these three fingers do not need to be cut off. In Japan, people eat meals using chopsticks, of course. So this is a thoughtful gesture to ensure that there is no inconvenience in eating meals. In some areas, if a person has mishandled a gun, the index or trigger finger may be cut off so they can't pull that trigger anymore. Here's a great tip. Imagine you have to cut off your little finger, let's say your right hand. Keep that hand raised up for quite a while, hold it up in the air before you're going to do any cutting. Hold it up until you feel your fingers tingling a little bit. It means the blood is draining out. Then bind the finger, let's say the little finger, tightly with elastic or string. This is important. One person cut off a finger without doing this, and the blood flowed so fast it looked like an airbrush, and the finger flew away. It couldn't be found. A finger had to be given, so he had to cut off another finger. So make sure to bind the fingers tightly, because tightly bound fingers rarely bleed like that. Next is the direction in which the hands are placed. It is common to cut with the palm of the hand facing up. So not like that, like this. It is easier to cut, and the cut is so much cleaner. Beautiful. Once you have your cut finger, place it in a vial filled with formalin and present it to the relevant party. One person panicked after cutting his finger off and called an ambulance that took him to the hospital. When he woke up, he was lying in a hospital bed, and of course, the cut finger had been neatly attached. It was as if he hadn't done anything. He went on a rampage against the hospital staff, yelling, "Why did you put my finger back?" The recipient then can bury the finger in the earth, place it on a Shinto altar, or put it in the refrigerator. Sometimes several fingers are placed side by side on an altar. One clan dried and mummified the fingers they received, and when collecting debts, they took them with them and laid several fingers on the desk so as to intimidate and scare people. There is a semi-documentary Yakuza film directed by Noboru Ando, former head of the Ando clan in real life and later movie star, called, in English, something along the lines of Yakuza Cruel Secret Record, Amputation of an Arm, something like that, made in 1976. In this movie, there is a scene where it looks as if a Yakuza is really cutting off a finger. Let me show you a little bit of it, and you can be a judge as to its authenticity.
親分子分の関係は本質的には力関係による上下結合であるから、その集団統制上一家の掟や戒律を犯した者に制裁が加えられる。要するに体に効く痛い思いをさせるということである。木刀を背負わせるとか、頭を剃るとか、眉を片方剃り落とすような例もある。またこのような指詰めは自分自身を傍にして相手に誠意を尽くすということである。1週間はその痛みのために眠れず、冬になるとその傷口は痛む。謝罪する場合はもちろん、喧嘩の仲裁とか兄弟分の破門を解く場合などよく行われる。明治18年に死んだ会津の虎鉄は親指と人差し指のみを残して3本ともなかったという。
In 1992, the anti-gang law was enacted. There were a variety of new prohibitions. One of them was, and is, the prohibition of forcing, soliciting, or assisting finger cutting. In the old days, if you wanted to quit the Yakuza and become a civilian, you had to say bye-bye to a finger or two. Otherwise, you couldn't leave. This resulted in the former Yakuza being discriminated against and unable to find regular work, a major obstacle if you are attempting to rejoin polite society. Former Yakuza who hit Civvy Street often concealed a lack of digits with fake silicone fingers. Then this law was passed. After the enforcement of this act, police raided a Yakuza's office as part of an ongoing investigation. They found numerous formalin-preserved fingers. The police removed the fingers one by one, examined them for fingerprints, and then searched for the owners of the fingers and arrested the leader of that clan on suspicion of injurious behavior. Today, this type of finger cutting is very rarely done. Most disputes are settled with money. So the practice of ritualized finger cutting has almost disappeared from our society. But the phrase yubikiri, or finger cutting, is still present in a song that children sing when they make promises. The children sing this song by intertwining their pinky fingers. Yubikiri game man, if you lie to me, I'll make you swallow 1,000 needles. And then, yubikita, or we cut our fingers as they pull their pinkies apart. Thus, the mutual removing of fingers symbolizes a promise to be kept and shared. In fact, just like the pinky swear that you might also be familiar with from your own childhood. Think back to the beginning of the video and how this compares with the prostitute giving her real finger to her one true love. So, an innocent children's song is a remnant of the act of cutting a finger as a sign of a strong promise, fidelity, and love. There are various old children's songs and children's games that remind us of blood and death, but we'll leave that story or those stories for another time. But, just in case, please don't ask a Yakuza to yubikiri. They just might do it and quite literally give you the finger.